I need you to understand something before we move any further. You did not simply come across this video. In a strange way, this video came across you. I know that might sound like something people casually say, but I want you to actually sit with it for a moment. There is a real difference between stumbling onto something by chance and being quietly directed toward it. And what is taking place right now, this exact moment with you watching this, it is not random. It is not just the algorithm doing its job. It is something far more intentional than either of those explanations. And somewhere beneath all the noise and movement of your day, you already sensed that. You felt something the instant you noticed the title. Not exactly curiosity, something softer than curiosity but heavier at the same time. Something closer to recognition. Like reading the opening line of something you once wrote long ago and somehow forgot about. You have been carrying something recently. Not the kind of weight that other people can easily see on you. Not the kind that draws sympathy or invites easy explanations. The kind that sits quietly just behind your chest, steady and constant. The kind you have lived with for so long that you almost stop noticing it altogether. But you do notice it in certain moments. You notice it in the mornings. You notice it in the small gaps between one thing and the next when distractions fade and it is just you and the truth of your life as it is right now. You notice it when someone asks how you are doing and you say fine while meaning something far more layered than that. And the truth, the real truth that you have not spoken out loud to anyone in a while, is that you are tired. Not weak, not broken, not falling apart, just tired. And there is a meaningful difference between those things. I need you to hear that clearly because the story you have been telling yourself about what this tiredness means is incomplete. Not even close to the full picture. You have been doing the work. Maybe not perfectly. Maybe not without slipping or stepping backward at times. Sometimes with nights where you felt things you thought you had already moved past. But you have been doing it. You have been choosing yourself in small, quiet ways that nobody claps for and nobody notices and nobody includes in highlight moments. The moment you chose not to send that message. The morning you still got up even when staying in bed would have been easier. The night you stayed present with something painful instead of escaping it, instead of reaching for your phone, instead of filling the silence with anything just to make it go away. The decision you kept making again and again to continue forward. Even when continuing felt like moving through something heavy, resistant, and completely invisible to everyone else around you. That is not nothing. That is not small. That is everything. And the part of you that feels exhausted right now is not the part that is failing. It is the part that has been holding more than it was ever meant to carry for far longer than it should have had to. And I want you to know that this weight has been noticed even when it felt like it was unseen. Welcome to this moment. I am here with you. And today, I want to talk to you about what it actually means when something finds you. Not the surface level meaning, not the version that sounds nice when repeated online. The deeper meaning, the one Carl Jung spent much of his life trying to express in a way the logical mind could accept without shutting down. Because Jung understood something most people resist their entire lives. He understood that the psyche, the deep living intelligence within you, is not passive. It is not just a storage space for memories, pain, and conversations you replay at night. It is an active force that moves toward wholeness with a quiet but persistent precision that does not wait for permission and does not wait for you to feel ready. And when you are actually ready, truly ready in the way that only comes after real struggle, real loss, or something inside you opening and you choosing growth instead of closing off, something shifts. The psyche begins to organize itself in a new way. It starts arranging the conditions for your next chapter with a level of precision that the logical mind often wants to label as coincidence, because coincidence feels safer than the alternative. The alternative is that you are being guided. The alternative is that life itself is responding to you in ways you cannot always see directly. So let me ask you something, and I want you to hold this question for a moment before you even try to answer it internally. What have you been trying to figure out completely on your own? Because there is something very specific here, and I want to say it carefully. There is a version of your life you have been holding in your mind for a long time. Not obsessively, not desperately, just holding it gently, like something meaningful and fragile that you are not sure whether to keep carrying or finally put down. A version where something unresolved becomes clear, where something suspended between you and another person, or between you and a future you can almost feel, finally becomes real and solid. You have not fully given up on it, but you have started quietly questioning it in the moments where you are most honest, where your defenses lower and the performance disappears, whether wanting it still makes sense, whether the hope you have been protecting privately against fear and even against advice from the part of you that just wants safety is actually wisdom or just fear wearing a different face before it lets go. And that question is exactly why this message reached you now. Because the answer is neither. It is not simply wisdom or foolishness. It is something more precise than both. What you are carrying is discernment in progress. You are learning the difference between hope that supports you and attachment that drains you. And that is one of the most important lessons a person can move through. And it is rarely clean or simple. It does not arrive in a neat way. It comes with confusion. It comes in cycles. It comes with setbacks that feel like proof you were wrong and moments of clarity that feel too delicate to trust. You are inside that process right now. And from the inside, it does not feel like growth at all. It feels like being stuck. It feels like standing in a doorway you cannot fully leave behind and cannot completely step through either. The space behind you is familiar, even though it hurts you. The space ahead is unknown, even though it holds what you want. And the doorway itself feels uncomfortable and exhausting. And yet you are still standing in it every single day, even when no one else recognizes it. Jung called this the transcendent function, the psychological process where opposing inner forces, what you want and what you fear, who you were and who you are becoming, the past you still carry, and the future that is quietly pulling you forward, begin to create something new. Not a compromise, not one side winning over the other, but a third form. Something that could not exist without both tensions being present at the same time. And this process does not follow your timing. It does not happen when you decide you are ready or when everything finally lines up perfectly. It happens when enough of the old structure inside you has loosened to make space for what is coming next. And that loosening often feels like nothing is happening at all. That is the part that confuses people the most. That is the doorway. What you are feeling right now is not the pressure of something ending. It is the pressure of something forming. You are not stuck. You are in the process of becoming, and becoming is one of the most disorienting human experiences because you are no longer who you once were, but you are not yet fully who you are going to be, and most days you are moving through that in-between space without any clear map. I want to stay here with you for a moment, because this part truly matters. The space in between is not an error. The in-between is not evidence that you failed, or that you are falling behind, or that something is off. The in-between is the process itself. It is the phase that appears like nothing is unfolding from the outside. People who are in the in-between seem ordinary. They function, they show up, they respond, they smile when expected. And no one can see that inside. There is a complete restructuring taking place. Everything you believed you understood about yourself, about love, about safety, about what you will tolerate and what you will no longer accept is being rearranged. That is what is happening within you right now. And that is not random. That is not meaningless. That is the most important part of your entire journey. Now I want to speak about the other person, the one you have been thinking about, the one whose name sits in a certain place in your chest that you cannot always reach, but that opens at times without warning, at random hours, in the middle of completely unrelated moments. When a song starts playing, or a certain kind of light fills a room in a particular way, or someone says a word that you and that person once used in a way that belonged only to both of you, I want to speak about them because they are part of this message too, not the center of it. You are the center of it, but they exist within it. And what I want you to understand about them is something that may be difficult to accept. If you are still in the phase where the pain is loudest, where unanswered questions still linger, where silence still feels sharp, you need to hear this carefully. They are in their own process, a process they did not consciously choose and cannot fully see from the inside and are not yet fully able to understand or even name. And that process is heavier than they show to anyone else. Because what is happening underneath whatever version of life they are presenting to the world is a confrontation with the gap between who they have been and who the most honest version of themselves requires them to become. That gap does not close easily. It does not close through distraction or forward motion or simply deciding to feel differently. It closes through inner reckoning, and that reckoning has a face, and that face resembles you. Not because you are their rescue, not because your healing depends on their awakening, not because you are meant to wait for them, none of that, but because you represented something real in a season of their life when everything else was performance, control, emotional distance, and carefully maintained separation. And the realness you brought, the specific quality of presence, attention, and emotional depth you gave them did not disappear when the connection ended. It did not vanish. It moved beneath the surface. And things that move beneath the surface have a way of continuing to grow. Underground things move toward the light even when the surface tries to ignore them. I am not telling you to wait for them. I want that to be clear because it is very easy to hear something like this and turn it into permission to pause your own life. That is not what this is. What I am telling you is something more important than waiting or not waiting or reaching out or remaining silent. I am telling you that the version of you who is grounded in her own becoming, the version you are quietly building right now in this in-between space, in the work nobody sees, nobody validates, and nobody applauds, that version is not in competition with love. She is the condition for it. The real kind of love. The kind that does not ask you to shrink yourself. The kind that does not require you to constantly adjust, translate, or minimize who you are. The kind that does not make you feel like you have to earn your place over and over again. That kind of love can only reach you when you are standing fully in your truth, without apology, without performance, without the silent pressure of wondering if you are enough to be chosen and kept. And you are closer to that version of yourself than you realize. Even if it does not feel that way right now, especially because it does not feel that way right now. The moments just before real change almost always feel like the opposite of change. They feel like stillness. They feel like nothing is shifting. They feel like the system has stopped responding. But Jung wrote about this in a way that remains relevant here. He observed that deep psychological transformation rarely announces itself before it happens. It is usually preceded by inattention, a period that feels like failure, regression, or stagnation, but is actually the pressure required for transformation to complete itself. The cocoon does not feel like becoming. It feels like being stuck, and then at the right time it opens. You are not failing. You are under the kind of pressure that comes before transformation. And that pressure is not random. It is structured. It has been building for exactly as long as it needed to build. And every part of it has been doing something inside you that you will only fully understand later, when you can look back and see what it was shaping you into. But even before that understanding arrives, I want you to trust something now. The quiet work you have been doing has not disappeared into nothing. The moments you chose yourself when no one was watching mattered. The times you did what was right for yourself without applause mattered. The private decisions, the restraint, the effort to keep going when it would have been easier to shut down, all of that has been building something real. Something is taking form. And there is something else I want to say about the person you are thinking about. I want to say it carefully because it matters. They are being changed by your absence. Not in a loud or dramatic way that they would easily admit. Not in a way they can clearly explain, but in a quiet way. Real change happens beneath awareness, in the parts of a person they do not fully control. The version of you they carry in memory is not fixed. It is alive. It evolves as they evolve. It interacts with who they are becoming. It remains present in moments they do not expect, not as noise, not as distraction, but as a question that does not go away. A question that appears in ordinary moments and does not need to speak loudly to be felt. Who are you becoming? Are you choosing it consciously? Is the life you are building truly yours, or is it simply what felt safest when you were afraid? These are not comfortable questions, and they are not ones people actively seek out. But truth has a way of returning, especially when it has been ignored. And here is what matters most for you to hold on to after this. Your healing cannot depend on their timing. Your life cannot be paused within someone else's process. That is not emotional advice. That is a psychological reality. The version of you that is trying to emerge cannot fully come forward while it is still organized around waiting for someone else to change, return, or understand. It needs you, your attention, your presence, your full participation in your own life. And the more you step into that, the more you become someone who is not waiting to be chosen, but someone who is already living fully as herself, the more everything aligned with that truth becomes possible. Not guaranteed, but aligned. There is a version of this story where what you have been holding quietly, hoping for, and working through begins to come together in a way you cannot fully see yet from where you are standing. Not because it is promised, but because you are becoming the kind of person who no longer abandons herself in the middle of becoming whole. And I want to speak gently to the part of you that feels tired of hoping, the part that is afraid in the quiet hours, the part that wonders if you gave too much, waited too long, or felt too deeply. You did not make a mistake by feeling deeply. You did not make a mistake by wanting something real. Depth is not your flaw. It is not what is wrong with you. It is the very thing that will make real love possible for you when it arrives. Because real love does not avoid depth. It recognizes it, and you are not at the end of anything right now. Even if it has felt like endings, you are at a threshold. And thresholds do not announce themselves loudly. They appear in small changes, in quieter mornings, in different choices, in moments where something inside you no longer reacts the way it once did. And slowly, without forcing it, without rushing it, life begins to reorganize itself around who you are becoming. And one day, you will look back at this place you are in right now and realize it was not emptiness. It was not delay. It was preparation. and you will see that you were never waiting at all. You were arriving.